Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all on today's webinar, which is basically a question and answer session on this very current and important topic, impact of COVID-19 on ISO 45001/OSHA's 18001 Occupational Health and Safety Management System. So I myself would be the presenter for today's webinar. And a brief intro. I am Syed Arshad Hashmi. I'm the training manager at Bureau Veritas Certification North America, based at their Houston office. I'm a lead auditor and trainer in number of ISO standards related to quality, environment, health and safety, information security, business continuity, energy management, and a lot of other ISO standards. I've conducted numerous trainings and audits in USA, Canada, Europe, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, throughout Middle East and in Pakistan. By profession, I'm an engineer with over 24 years of experience providing training, auditing, and implementation expertise for many ISO standards, and I've worked with a number of industrial sectors. I'm a IRCA certified trainer for a number of ISO standards, and I'm also a certified information security manager and certified in risk and information system control by ISACA. A brief about our company, Bureau Veritas. It's a French company created in 1828. It's a testing, inspection, and certification company. Whenever there's a need for testing, inspection, and certification, we are there. We specialize in quality, health, safety, environment, social responsibility, sustainability, and enterprise risk management. It's a 5 billion euro company with the total strength of around 77,000 employees. It's a global company present in 140 countries, and we are present through our offices and labs, around 1,400 throughout the globe. We have a total customer base of more than 400,000 customers around the globe. These are our 8 business lines through which we provide our testing, inspection, and certification services. The webinar and training belongs to the certification business line. I also belong to the certification business line. And under the certification business line, we offer certification against all these international standards which are related to health safety, food safety, quality, environment, and a lot of other international standards. And we provide training against all these international standards. Our global clientele at a glance, you can see a few key clients out of that 400,000 clients that we have. And let's talk about the expectations. So one is the intent of the webinar or this Q&A session, which is the prime objective is to evaluate the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic on the current health and safety management system and how to set the countermeasures within the framework of health and safety management system, be that 45,001 or 18,001. But the questions that I received from all of you, so I reset the expectations and the objectives vis-a-vis the questions that I received. And I put all the questions in 3 categories. So the first 2 category was the prime intent of the Q&A webinar session. The impact of COVID-19, I received number of questions on that, and I received number of questions on the management of COVID-19 with second domain that I would be addressing, which should be the second expectation, as I can perceive from your questions. Then I received number of questions related to the migration to 45,001 from OSHA's 18,001. As we know that a deadline is coming, so people want to know about the extension, any extensions are there, what is the date, that the 18001 would be valid in anything on the remote auditing side. So before I move on, let me tell you that I'll be more focused on the 1 and 2. And 3, as the time may allow, I'll try to reach that area and will provide you the information. Nevertheless, if I could not be able to cover 3 or would not be able to cover that in detail, I can tell you that there was a webinar which I did on remote auditing, which is available on our Bureau Veritas North America YouTube channel. As you can see, we have a YouTube channel, and on the bottom right, there is a remote auditing webinar. So you can refer that webinar, and you can refer our YouTube channel for a lot of other free information that is available, the webinars that we are doing on a number of interesting topics that is of interest to the industry. So you can refer to that, and you'll find a lot of information on the third topic, which is the remote auditing and the validity of the 18001 and the migration to 45001. With respect to this YouTube channel, I would also say that this webinar, one that I'm doing right now, this would also be available on the same YouTube channel. So later on, if you want to refer to this recording, you can well refer to our YouTube channel to access the recording of this particular webinar. So let's start with the first expectation, which is the intent of the whole webinar. That what is the impact of this pandemic on the 45001 or 18001? The questions that I received, and I tell you that we received more than 150 registrations. So 150 questions were submitted, and almost like 60%, 70% were related to this particular, and I selected few. If you do not see your question on the slide, does not mean I'm not going to cover it. I've just highlighted few which were like unique or which were covering a lot of other questions that were submitted. So it does not mean I will not be answering your question. I will be answering your question either under a different question that is written on the slide, but I'll be covering the whole 45001 standard or 18001 standard with the impact of this pandemic clause-wise. So do not worry on that. And even afterwards, if you have any question or if you are having any question during the presentation, you can keep on submitting those questions, and I'm going to respond to them through email. If the time may allow, I will try to respond to that. If not, then I'll respond to that through the email. So you can keep on submitting your questions during the session. So this first domain, the impact of COVID-19 on a occupational health and safety management system, I received a number of questions. The questions were related to whether this is an internal issue, this is an external issue, what is the impact on the risk assessment, how do we evaluate this in the risk assessment, and then questions related to the differences between the 45001 and OSHA's 18001, and in regard to the impact of COVID-19, is that any impact on the environment? So I received a number of interesting questions. So instead of answering these questions one by one, let me start with the 45001 sequence, and I'll keep on comparing it with 18001 as required. And I would request all of you, if you can keep your notepad and pen or pencil ready, because I would be quoting number of clauses throughout this presentation. So it would be better for you to take note of. Nevertheless, the presentation would be available on our YouTube channel, so you can always refer it back. So if any one of you may know the 45001 and OSHA's 18001 standard. So let me start with 45001 because it covers a larger span than OSHA's 18001 clause, especially with respect to the new clauses of context of the organization. So yes, for the first two clauses, which is my 4.1 and 4.2, you have a new issue. We have a new issue, which is the disease outbreak, which is this pandemic. This is impacting the health and safety management system of every organization. So yes, we need to consider this issue now. That will be the issue. And by 4.1, when we use to determine the issues which can impact, this will be an add-on to that. So that's how it will be changed, or it will be added on with this pandemic. The second thing somebody asked, that whether it's an internal or an external issue, it's very much an external issue, just like any pandemic. Even if somebody internally is getting infected, that must have been contracted outside the organization. So it's very much an external issue. It's a pandemic. It's a global issue. The other thing is the needs and expectations. So you can understand that for an organization, if I'm an employee to any organization, what I need to know the measures with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, how to protect myself. And then I need to have resources, and then I need to have the PPE. So my needs and expectations with respect to the specific this pandemic will be changing, and you need to account that for. The other thing that you need to consider is the customer. Customer needs and expectations greatly change, especially for the businesses where they're entering your premises, where they're entering like the banks, like even if the takeaway is there, if they're entering the premises of the food business. So wherever they're entering their premises, they will have a different need that of course the company must have been practicing the social distancing, the disinfectants, a number of measures that you need to take. So their needs and expectations you need to consider. Similarly of the supplier, similarly of the visitors. So any human which is interacting now with the businesses, they will have new needs and expectations with this COVID-19 pandemic. They expect countermeasures by the organizations, and they would prefer to do business, to visit those premises where they have the trust on. So that is the second clause which will be impacted. Then moving ahead, 4.3 scope. I don't think there would be any impact on the scope as such because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Whatever the scope that you have considered for the certification, the 4.3 clause, this will be considered as a hazard within that scope. Moving ahead, the leadership clause, 5.1. That 5.1, yes, we like to see the leadership in a leading role with this COVID-19 pandemic, providing the resources, taking all the measures that is necessary to protect the humans, the workforce within the organization, and most importantly, how they're making people aware on this COVID-19 pandemic. So we need to see the leadership role, the 5.1 would be added on with the specific regarding the countermeasuring the COVID-19 pandemic within their organization. Then the other impacted clause would be the 5.3, the roles, responsibilities, and authorities. So that 5.3 is the clause which will be now the human roles and responsibilities will be changed with respect to this pandemic, and I'll be further focusing on this particular thing when I would read the 7.3 clause. This is best managed and needs to be managed by the humans. So as we know that the spread of this thing, the main reason for the spread of this thing is the human interaction. So how can we control the human? So that will be impacted. That should be put in the specific job descriptions and roles and responsibilities with health and safety as required by 5.3 clause. Because any of their unsafe act can really cause issues at the organizational level. So 5.3 will be impacted. And then let's talk about the main clause, which is my sixth clause, which is about risk assessment. And people ask me a number of interesting questions that shall we document other viruses also in the risk assessment? And how do we evaluate the severity of this COVID-19 pandemic when doing the risk assessment? So first of all, this COVID-19. So how we were experiencing a risk assessment before? Did we include the other viruses previously? No, mostly no. Especially if we are not belonging to a healthcare unit, then no. Maybe in a healthcare unit that is applicable, and they would be documenting that. So for this particular pandemic, I would say a disease outbreak. A disease outbreak would put as a hazard in your hazard identification and risk assessment, and then you can be specific to COVID-19 pandemic, because the countermeasures are specific. Now, they may be generic with respect to other viruses, but for this one, because we are experiencing it, I would recommend to go by this particular one so that you can come up with the particular controls which will counter this COVID-19 pandemic. And then with your experience, you may evolve and you may write the other diseases. You may like to include controls for other diseases as well. But for now, as we are experiencing this thing and we immediately need to either control the spread in our organization, or we need to restart our businesses with proper controls in place. Let's focus on this one. The other question regarding the hazard severity. So yes, if you can see the bottom line question, which is a very interesting question, that what severity rating do you attribute to the COVID-19 hazard identified in the assessment of hazards? So the interesting thing is that for a worst case scenario, yes, it is high severity because it can cause death. Okay, but if you refer specific clause of the 45001 standard, which is 6.1.2.2a. Now that specific clause talks about doing the risk assessment considering the effectiveness of the existing controls. So you need to understand that both the probability and the severity needs to be determined in light of the preventive and curative measures that you are practicing at the moment on the ground. And then you need to evaluate the risk. Let me give you an example. So for example, if you are talking about a healthcare unit, the risk of this pandemic in a healthcare unit, in an emergency ward, will not be the same in a service sector based organization, in a manufacturing unit, because the risk is too high there, because the probability of those viruses is too high there as compared to any other area which is not a healthcare unit. We need to understand these dynamics, that how to evaluate is with respect to the environment that is there, with respect to the awareness that is there available among the people, with respect to the any past experiences and the issues that is there at the organization level, with respect to the available PPEs that is there, and with respect to the level of implementation of all these controls which is suggested by the management. So this risk is primarily dependent on the probability and the severity, but both the probability and the severity needs to be determined considering the existing control scenario. So it depends, as I said, it depends, even though it depends upon the nature of the business and the outside world, but then what is the level of implementation? And then you need to evaluate the risk. And then you need to come up with the curative measures as well, that in case it happens, then how to contain it and how to not let it spread within the organization. So that is the overall phenomena with respect to the risk assessment. So the sixth clause will be impacted. Within the sixth clause, I would say another clause which is 613, which about legal requirements. So as we are listening to number of state requirements coming up with the wearing the mask, practicing the social distancing. So I can give you a little input regarding the laws. So one is the OSHA Act. There is a General Duty Clause 5A, which talks about the employer being responsible to protect the workforce against any known hazards. So it's a generic one, but that will be used for the implementation of any state requirement that is coming up to be implemented and to be practiced by the people or by the organization. The other two regulations that are there are one is called IIPP, Injury Illness Prevention Program, and the other one is Workplace Safety Program. So both these programs also state the same requirement, that the employer is responsible to protect the workforce against any known hazards. And this one is a very much known hazard. So any implementation and anything that will be enforced of any guidelines by the state, that will be under these laws. So this is some. So my intent is to let you know that 613 clause, which is legal requirement, that will also be that will now need to incorporate, and I need to see it at a minute level, that what exactly has been required to be practiced by the state, and we implement that thing. But these would be the governing laws for any of those SOPs or any of those guidelines that has been provided by the state. Uh, then lastly is the 614 clause, which talks about the proposed controls. So 614 is a result of the risk. If the risk is high, more controls are needed. If the risk is low, maybe less control will may work. So it depends again, as I explained earlier, on the scenario, that in which type of scenario we are in, and what is the level of implementation that will be suggesting further controls. Now, people have placed a number of questions on what controls should be there. So my second objective, or my second domain that I would be covering within this webinar, is about the management of these COVID-19 pandemic. So let me read the second part, and that will complement the 614. And I'll reiterate that the 614, you can refer a number of guidelines which are available out there, and I'll give you an overview of those guidelines in my second section. Then we have 7.3 clause, which will be impacted by this COVID-19, which is about awareness. And I tell you that this the most important line of defense against this COVID-19 pandemic is the human mind frame. We still see people around who are saying that no, it's not that serious, uh, and they have been careless, or they've been not practicing the social distancing or the other measures, preventive measures, as they should have been following. So this mind frame needs to be changed, especially at the working side, and even for their safety, even outside the working side. So people responsible for the awareness, they should understand that human would be the most important element to counter this COVID-19 pandemic. So how you do the training sessions, how you make them aware, how you make them buy the idea that these countermeasures are important, and for their safety primarily, and for other safety within the organization, and for their families as well. So this is going to be fully beefed up, and whatever the training sessions, retraining sessions, maybe an objective can be set on 7.3 clause, number of hours of training in a year for a particular individual. So that needs to be keep on hammering and rehammering on the human, that this is an important issue that they need to make part of their lives. Then the other clause which will be impacted would be the 7.4 clause, which is external communications. Any external communication that is taking place between the authorities, because especially the COVID-19 pandemic, that needs to be documented, needs to be retained. The other clause in connection to the 614 clause, which was about the proposed controls, the controls, when we talk about implementing them on the ground, the 811 and 812 clause, which talks about the hierarchy of the controls. And as you can see, that one of the ways that a lot of companies have adopted is allowing the people to work remotely. So why they have done it? Because they have taken the human interaction away. They are trying to reduce the human interaction. So these are the level of controls, 811 and 812. And in my second domain, I'll be talking about the countermeasures for this COVID-19 pandemic, which is again would be related to my 811 and 812 clauses, which is about implementation of those controls, which we have suggested in the risk assessment sheet against 614 clause. Then the other clause that will be impacted is the 814 clause, which talks about buying the products and services and subcontractors visiting our premises. So we need to see that what are the hazard areas, what are the high risk areas where this hazard can take place. And of course, starting from the level of human interaction till the surfaces that has been mostly touched and been used, till the level of any one coming up with the symptoms, how to isolate, how to quarantine, and how to respond to that symptoms, or checking the workforce before entering the workplace. All these things, because of the nature of the hazard, because the nature of the work needs to be accounted for. For example, if there is only loading and unloading area where the visitors are, where the suppliers are not visiting the main premises, then that area needs to be looked upon and controls needs to be practiced there. But then if there are contractors which are visiting the main area and they're doing some construction or electromechanical work that is there, and they are interacting with all the employees that is there, how do we practice the different type of controls that could be there that needs to be practiced? So it again depends upon the nature of the business, the nature of the environment. um, I give you one other example. Like, for example, if somebody is remotely working, so the lot of measures, countermeasures, which we may practice on the ground at the location may not be applicable to a person who's working remotely. So that's how you need to evaluate. If there's a supplier who's supplying you services sitting remotely, so that's how you need to evaluate that what type of risk that is there vis-a-vis this pandemic to your people, and then how to place the countermeasures to minimize or mitigate that risk. So that was my 814 clause. Then the next clause was is 8.2, which talks about emergency preparedness and response. Of course, before this pandemic, the world, we all did not know the pandemic of a disease outbreak. Now we are coming to know. And otherwise, most of us, generally speaking, including the healthcare unit, most of us must be having the emergency preparedness and response vis-a-vis the natural disasters, the flooding, earthquake, the snowstorms, maybe the sandstorms if you're in the Middle East area, uh, or the fire or the explosions and things like that. So we are considering the usual emergency scenarios. But now our 8.2 clause would need to incorporate the disease outbreak, a pandemic, and how to respond to it, so that next time, if it happens, we can be able to continue our business, or to a level we would be able to continue, and the countermeasures must be intact or triggered if we come across any of such scenario in future. So that 8.2 needs to incorporate that pandemic or that disease outbreak as an emergency, and then you need to come up with the countermeasures for that. Then the other clauses that will be impacted is my 911 clause, which talks about the monitoring and measurement. So my health and safety checklist, as earlier, the HSC people must have been checking the fire extinguishers, the smoke detectors, the fire alarms, the validity of that. People are wearing safety shoes, people are wearing safety gloves or not. Now their checklist should also incorporate the countermeasures that you have placed on the ground to be practiced by the people against this COVID-19 pandemic. Your checklist will also incorporate that, and that clause will be impacted, 911 clause, and you may need to report the performance to the management on the health and safety management system specific to this COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe in terms of that the symptomatic inspections that you are doing with the personnel, and in case you are finding out somebody with symptoms but still negative, we do not know, but symptoms, we are quarantining. So the performance level on that, you may like to set parameters, set matrices on that to be reported to the management. Maybe not waiting for the management review, but probably on the in monthly or fortnightly levels meetings. So this needs to be again devised and again changed with to counter to incorporate the arrangements that we are placing for COVID-19 pandemic. The other clauses is my 9.2, the internal audit. Of course, the checklist may include the especially checking those countermeasures as you have suggested in the risk assessment and as they were supposed to be implemented against the 8th class. So that 9.2 checklist, the internal auditing checklist, must have specific checkpoints to evaluate the practices against COVID-19 pandemic. Management review should have a specific discussion. Any changes to the management system that will also be impacted, but that will be impacted at a practical level. Whatever you are doing on the ground to counter that, so that needs to be reported and that needs to be evaluated by the management. Management That is the process is owned by the management. So management can take account for uh, all the uh, all the countermeasures that you are doing against the COVID-19 pandemic. They can take account for that in that particular process, which is the management review. Then the usual 10.2 clause, which talks about corrective, any incident, corrective actions. So in case of any incident with respect to finding out some symptoms, how do you respond to it? That all needs to be documented. So again, this is as per scenarios. So as far as the mechanism of the management review or the mechanism of the incident finding and corrective action, that will not be impacted. But the contents of it, with respect to the discussion on COVID-19 and the management of COVID-19, the contents of it would be they would help you in recording them better. So they will be active in their the way they are active at the moment. But then we expect that in case of any incident, that is it routed through the corrective action process, and how have you evaluated different actions? So that is one of the things that we like to that will be the way it will be impacting the 10.2 clause. So this was all about my first domain, which was the major intent of this webinar. Now let's talk about the second domain, which was about management of the COVID-19 at the workplace. And a lot of questions I received, almost like some of the questions were overlapping questions uh, between one and two. A lot of questions were related to that how to protect. So I tell you that there's a lot of information available on different sites. Okay, and the free reference sites that we use and we develop our checklist, you can also use that. And so these are some of the questions, by the way, that we received for the management of the COVID-19. And as you can read from the questions, and as I said earlier, if your questions are not written, don't think that I will not address them. I will address them, but they may be covered through some other questions. Um, I've highlighted a few important questions as well for better readability. So as you can read all these questions, primarily they're asking about the countermeasures that need to be practiced on the ground. What should be there? So before I start, let me compare this thing with the standard requirement. The three clauses that will be talking about these countermeasures, or maybe four clauses also. 614, where you are going to suggest these countermeasures. 811 and 812, against which you would be considering the hierarchy of controls and implementation of those controls on the ground. And the fourth one is 911 clause, which will be a counter verification on the implementation arrangements of the 811 and 812. So those would be the four top-notch clauses that I would be discussing against the second domain. So this is my comparison with the standard requirement. Now let's talk about what we need to do to counter this pandemic if we are currently working or if we are thinking of reopening. A few of the sources that you can refer to are these sources: the CDC, the OSHA, and the World Health Organization that I referred, and I developed my next slide based on that. And we at Bureau Veritas, we are also doing a hygiene certification by the name of Safeguard. A lot of our own checklists are based also on this and a lot of other sources. This is good sources to start with. If you are not in US, if you are outside US, then refer to your legal municipality, local municipality and local laws and local sources who are fighting against or who are proposing the guidelines for reopening for this uh, reopening your businesses in today's environment. Nevertheless, what I see is that they're not much different. The personal hygiene, workspace hygiene, industrial hygiene, almost all of them are same. They differ with respect to the industry, and they differ like 10 to 20%, not much. The basic countermeasures and hygienic practices are same, but they differ. Like for example, in a construction industry, in a food business operation, and in a bank, and in a healthcare unit. So the countermeasures are a little bit different, but the basic level countermeasures are same, but they were like beefed up with respect to the level of risk and level of hazard that is there. Well, I would say I would like to segregate the healthcare unit completely because the level of risk and the level of interaction is entirely different than any other trade or industry. So let's segregate that part. But for the other part, the level of basic hygiene and basic safety and the basic countermeasures are same, and then they were beefed up with respective control with respect to that industry or the risk levels in that particular industry. So we consider these main references. You can also refer these sites, and we need to consider that what is the mode of transmission, because it's a pandemic. We need to stop human being affected by that. So what is the route that the virus take? We need to first understand that, and I believe it's nothing new to you. We are all well aware of these basic mode of um, transmission. And the way we are going to protect is, first of all, we need to ensure general hygiene measures across the organization. As I said, basic level of hygiene. And you'll find number of information. So my intent for this slide is to give you a framework so that you can think in those directions to counter this COVID 19, to manage this COVID 19. You're running a business or you're thinking of reopening it. Okay. So a lot of things you will find very generic because they're already there in the media and people are coming across. So one thing is the personal level. Now, personal level, you need to think before work and at work. So how can you train your humans? How can you train your workforce that what do they need to practice at home and at work? You cannot control their interaction when they go out of the work. You can ask them to practice social distancing at workplace, but what if they are not doing it and they are practicing gatherings outside the workplace? How can you control that? Then they're bringing that within the organization. So as I told you earlier, that you need to provide awareness and you need to train and retrain them, keep on hammering these concepts and make them buy this idea, make them understand the severity and the sensitivity attached to it. We are not just risking our own lives, we are risking the other people's lives as well. We are risking our loved one lives as well. So you need to make them understand uh, these concepts, that this is not just their own safety, this is others' safety as well. And that goes with the basic level of hand washing, avoid touching nose, and I think you are all aware of the rest, what is written in that box. So one domain is the human. As I said, this is the most important domain that you need to focus upon. The second domain as a framework that you need to focus, even if you are running a business or you are thinking of reopening, is the organizational level. Risk assessment we have already talked about. Now, risk assessment will give you an idea of the nature of business that you are in or the level of risk that within your environment may be there vis-a-vis this COVID-19 pandemic. Different places will have different level of risk. So a loading and unloading area, a visitor area, the area where there are gatherings, the break room, canteen, a food court, will have different level of risk because of the different level of interaction as compared to the other areas where you're working at a distance, where there are less interaction, or let's suppose you are working remotely. It all depends upon the level of risk. And so we need to plan accordingly at the organizational level that how we are going to practice different level of controls with different level of risk within those areas. Um, Cleaning and disinfection of the workplaces, it will become a common practice. People have started practicing it. Whatever was there earlier, now that's all beefed up. The number of cleaning and number of disinfection is increased. That will also go with the high risk areas with the surfaces which has been mostly touched. And I give you one interesting comment that I just read. For example, the use of the biometric would not be a preferred way to mark the attendance or identify a person. And you can well understand it why. The same surface cannot be used by all the people. That has a high risk of carrying the germs. So maybe a job, maybe a card a digital card, maybe a attendance card, or any other means than using the same surface. Otherwise, biometric was a very good way of, very effective way of marking the attendance and identifying the person. But now, because of this pandemic, that will not be the preferred way. So these kind of changes that you need to consider on your site, and a lot of information is available on the three references that I gave you in the previous slide. Then symptoms testing. Um, Commonly, people are coming, and how do you take care of the, how do you inspect the basic symptoms in them, and what is the process if somebody is found with the basic symptoms, and how do you go about that, your process. Personal protective equipments, again, as I said, that this personal protective equipment in the healthcare unit is entirely different than in any other unit than the healthcare. Why? Because of the level of risk. So your investment or your countermeasures are heavily dependent on the risk that you are identifying in different type of businesses, and within a business in different type of sections. So your risk assessment would be the driving element for the level of controls that you need to practice. Remote working, flexible on-site hours, these are all been in practice. When they're remotely working, of course, we are reducing the level of risk of interaction between the people towards the risk of transmission. And then on-site waste management. So how do we segregate the waste, especially the waste that we are using for the PPEs for this COVID-19 pandemic? So somebody asked me the question that how to dispose of the gloves. So if you are not belonging to a healthcare unit, you can just dispose it off by segregating it from the other waste. But if you are part of a healthcare unit, then yes, it needs to be followed uh, the same procedure as we follow for a biomedical waste. So again, every action, every countermeasure, there are a lot available on the net on all these sites, but we need to select the one that can work best for us with the level of risk that we are having. In a service-based environment, you can go with the basic level of measures, basic level of social distancing, with basic level of hand washing, disinfections, cleaning, and not and making policies for not gathering at one place and things like that, and remote working also. So these are all the basic level of measures that any organization can follow, and then over and above you can follow others. So my the intent of this slide is to give you a framework so that you can think in all these directions while planning for countering this COVID-19 pandemic. Either you are running your business or you are thinking of restarting your business. So personnel level issues, to beef that up. Organization level, the thing that the organization need to do. And then lastly, you need to also think in the response mechanism. When someone is found infected, then how do you respond to it? How do you quarantine or isolate? And how do you assess the other people who work in close contact with that infected? So your incident management or your response mechanism must be looked deeply into it, that you are coming across any person within your organization, then how do you respond, and how do you take care of the rest of the business? So you need to pre-plan, you need to create the scenarios, and whatever is, and somebody deciding authority needs to be there who can decide. Let's suppose that person is sitting somewhere at a place and not in touch with the workforce, and then you can evaluate. So my point is that you need to evaluate and decide then and there that how to proceed with a particular. Of course, we cannot proceed with the business because the lives are at stake here. It's a matter of life and death. We do not know that this person infected or the other person which is infected may may be the worst case scenario and may cause this may turn into a death. So we need to understand this phenomena and we need to take measures accordingly. With the end of this slide, I would tell you that the main element for all these countermeasures is the human. So we need to pay a lot of emphasis on the human mindset, how to take this seriously. And for that, we need training and retraining sessions. So whoever are responsible for the trainings, you need to train your workforce. So apart from monitoring, apart from checking, you cannot be on their heads all the time. They need to practice it. And the way people practice is once they have a mind frame for that. So you need to understand to create a mind frame. You need to practice it. You need to set an example for that. And then you need to train and retrain your workforce. That is one of the key elements to counter this pandemic. With that, I move to the third domain, which was my migration to 45001. And the questions that we received, as you can see, are related to, primarily they are related to the status of the migration of 45001 from 18,001. How long will that be valid? So first of all, when the 45001 came in March 2018, the last status that still applies. There is a 3-year period to migrate from 18,001 to 45,001. And during that 3-year period, the OSHA's 18,001 will be recognized. And that 3 years period will be ending by March 2021. Okay, that is one thing. The other thing that you may like to refer is go to a site, iso.org, iso.org, and write down OSHA's 18,001, and you will find this information, very accurate and very precise information regarding the migration process. In addition to that site, you can also download a free document which is available on the site. This is called IAF, International Accreditation Forum, MD, which stands for Mandatory Document 2121. So just write down on the site, you can download a PDF that's freely available. It's of the International Accreditation Forum. And they have provided all the guidelines for the migration from 18,001 to 45,001. And they are valid as of now. So that will answer a number of your questions. You can refer to my remote auditing webinar as well. I like to answer, if you can see, so if I see I'm reading the questions, by the way. Any experiences successfully conducting the virtual site visits? Yes, I have done the virtual audit myself for 45,001 and 14,001, and they went very well. The idea, the concept is that mostly the surveillance audits and or the part of the recertification audits, they can be done remotely, either partially or fully, depending upon the number of other factors, and that is decided by the technical manager within a certification body, that how much can be done remotely and how much can be done on site. And as I said, that I have covered this topic in detail in my other webinar, which is on remote auditing. So the clauses that we normally cover during a remote audit is the clauses that we use to verify by being on site, but through the documents. For example, the management review, an internal audit, KPIs and your health and safety objectives, your risk assessment sheets. So these are those documents which the processes we do not see happening there. Rather, they have happened and we are verifying through the documents. So the same concept applies. It's just that we are sitting remotely. So the documents can be shared. We ask different questions. The incident response mechanism, the corrective action that has been taken, the change management that has been done, any compliance evaluation that has been done, the checklist for health and safety, what has been reported, any deviation that has been reported, any incident that has happened. So all that documentary verification that we used to do on site, now we can do it off site as well through remote audits, and I have done it myself, followed by an on site audit. So what happens is that if there is a 2-man day of audit that was due with a company, so probably 1-man day can be done remotely and the other 1-man day will be done on site in coming months, within the next 6 months. So I've detailed that in my remote auditing webinar, and you can refer that. I like to refer a specific question here where they say many plants have been closed for weeks or months or reduced capacity and personnel returning in phases resulting in delayed implementation. How can clients with large number of sites achieve successful? So what I say is that this is something you need to discuss with your certification body. With number of sites, that's a multi-site audit. The multi-site audit, the certification body goes by sampling. So you need to sit with your certification body that about that sample and how to go about that that those sites which are being reactivated by the return of the employees. So these are some of the options that you need to check with your certification body, and you need to evaluate that. With that being said, um, these are some of our trainings that we offer. These are public trainings and live virtual class trainings. They are from 1 to 5 days, and they are also IRCA certified training. A new training that we have introduced because of this COVID-19 pandemic is new actions, regulations, and protocols for COVID-19. This covers, in fact, there's a new certification that we are offering, which is called hygiene certification. And for that hygiene certification, we are doing these trainings, and this is detailing all the possible control points or countermeasures or preventive measures and curative measures that could be there. And it covers the legal requirement, and it provides all that need to be known by the organization. Um, and for any of these trainings, you can contact our training coordinator, Ms. Cindy Haight. Her numbers are there, and she's very much available. And you can, for all the above trainings, you can register yourself online as well. So we have a training site which is called bureauveritastraining.com/US. So you can access this site and you can see all the training courses, our live virtual training courses as well, our e-learning courses related to cybersecurity. They're all available on that site. As I said at the beginning, this is our YouTube channel. So this webinar will be uploaded on this channel in a while. You can access this later, you can refer it later. And the questions that you have submitted during the webinar, I'll try to respond to that, the email. Nevertheless, if any question, even after this webinar comes in your mind, you can put that question on the email, bvcerttraining@bureauveritas.com. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for listening to this webinar. And I wish you the very best with your journey, that you would be able to effectively implement these controls and would be able to make your health and safety management system effective to counter the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.